Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here, and on today's episode of The Guns That Shaped Me, we finally made it to the Ruger Mini 14. In the last episode, where I talked about my Universal M1 carbine, I mentioned that the Mini 14 did not originally pique my interest because it just, looked so strange compared to, say, my Marlin 22 rifle, or say like a Ruger 1022, or a semi-automatic shotgun, or something where it ejects out the side and it has an actual ejection port on the side as opposed to coming out the top. I was not familiar with the Garand style of action that the Mini 14 and the M1 carbine have. So originally, when I came across the Mini 14 when I was a teenager, it didn't pique my interest right away, but for some reason the M1 carbine did. And I learned about the M1 carbine and the M1 Garand after the Mini 14. Like I said, when I was young, a teenager, I didn't really know a whole lot about guns and the different models and variations of guns. I knew about the different types of actions, lever action, semi-automatic, pump action, bolt action. I knew all that. But I didn't know like how many different variations of each of these types of actions there were. So, the Mini 14 just kind of didn't pique my interest, especially the tactical one, because I was not into tactical firearms back then. And so, with the adjustable stock and the rails and the flash suppressor, all that kind of stuff, it really just kind of turned me off. But eventually, maybe a year later, after I became interested in the M1 carbine, I did grow to love the Mini 14, and I decided that yes, I did want to get myself a Mini 14. But they were expensive, and back then they weren't that expensive, but to me, a poor college student, $700 was a lot of money. So I worked at Walmart at the time, and back then Walmart actually sold guns, and in fact they actually sold AR-15s. This was getting to be right around the time that AR-15s were going to be not sold anymore at Walmart. Actually, I think this is probably like a year or so after I bought this gun. But right about the time where I was wanting to buy a Mini 14, Sandy Hook, this was not long after Sandy Hook happened, and AR-15s and basically anything that was semi-automatic was just gone from Walmart, from Bass Pro, from any gun shop you could go into. There basically was no semi-automatic rifles, whether it was an AR, an AK, an M14, a Mini 14, anything. You could not find anything. And so, I was saving up the money for it, but there just weren't any Mini 14s to be had. Now, of course, you could go online and pay like twice as much for one, or go to a gun show and pay twice as much for a Mini 14, but I was a poor college student. I couldn't do that, so I kind of just waited and waited and waited until one came into stock. And it was actually a night that I was off, because I usually would work like 5 to 10 on the weeknights. And so it was a night that I was off, but one of my coworkers actually took a picture of this particular rifle and, in the gun case, and sent it to me and said, "Hey, look what we got." And so that night I ran up there before they closed with all my money, and I don't even remember, did I pay cash for it? I don't even remember if I paid cash or card, but I went up there that night and I bought this rifle. And this is like I think it's like a 582 series maybe. So you do have the scope bases. I mean, this is a brand new rifle back in 2013, I guess, 2012, 13. I think it was 2013. So you got the scope bases, but it is drilled and tapped for a rail, which it also came with. And of course it has your peep sights that are adjustable. They're not exactly user friendly. You have to use some Allen wrenches. I might eventually swap this out for a tech sight like I have on my Mini 30. But it's, as far as sights go, it's not that bad. And of course you have the winged front post, which I like. And your traditional, heat shield and everything like that. And it came with 2 5-round mags. Walmart didn't carry Mini 14s that had anything more than a 5-round mag, but it came with 2 of them. So that was nice. And then later I got some 20-rounder. Over the years I've got quite a few 20 rounders and 30 rounders, so I actually have quite a few magazines for this rifle. And I've probably put a few hundred rounds through this particular rifle. And later I ended up getting another Mini 14 and a Mini 30, and but this was the first Mini 14. In fact, this is the only Mini 14 that I got that was brand new. The other 2, the Mini 30 and my Mini 14 with a scope on it, the other 2 are older. They have the pencil barrel. They have, in fact, the one with the side mount scope actually doesn't even have scope mounts on it. It is a side mount scope, which I actually kind of prefer that, because you do have the use of your iron sights as well as the scope. But this is the first one. It really, I liked the Mini 14 before I had one, but after I had one, I really liked it, and it just became my favorite rifle, basically. I mean, this, I say a lot of guns are like one of my favorite guns, but this particular one might be my all-time favorite rifle, if not my favorite firearm altogether. But, anyway, I've taken this gun out. I've shot it quite a bit. But just like with all my guns, or almost all my guns, I just haven't had time or money to take it out and shoot it as much as I would like to. I've had to spend money on, cars and trucks and tractors, all these things that cost a lot of money. We've gone on several vacations, and, I had to pay for a wedding, so I just don't have a whole lot of extra money to buy ammunition. Now, I could take it out and blow through all the ammunition I have, but I don't really have the money to replace all the ammunition. So, anytime I go shooting anymore, I only put like a box, maybe 2, through whatever gun I'm shooting. And to me, that's a lot of ammunition, because I just don't have the money to replace, 500 rounds of ammunition all at once. But, eventually I'll get it out and shoot it again and show it off. I haven't gone hunting with this particular rifle, and I probably wouldn't with this one. I might take out the other Mini 14 with the scope and the synthetic stock and all that. That's a little bit more ideal for hunting. And, I wouldn't hunt like deer with it, but maybe coyotes or foxes or something like that would be more ideal. That would be a more ideal gun for that kind of hunting. But, this gun, it's really just a plinker, and that's really what I bought it for. I mean, yeah, it would make a good home defense rifle, but like I said, I just kind of stick with a shotgun. So yeah, that's really all I use it for. And you could take out some pests with it as well. I mean, it's a 223 5.56, so you could take out varmints with it if you had it with you around the property. But I really just take it out, shoot it for fun. I'd really like to get some steel targets set up at some quite a bit of range. Kind of just make my own gun range at the farm and shoot this at steel targets along with all my other guns too. But that would be a great way to shoot with this rifle, is shoot steel at 100 yards or so. And that would just be a really fun time, along with shooting things like soda cans and tin cans and water jugs, 2 liters, things like that. That's the kind of shooting that I really like to do with guns like this. And if I could only have one rifle, it would probably be this one, to be honest with you. It's just my favorite. And that's, of course I would never only limit myself to one rifle, but if I could only have one rifle to have and be able to use it hunting and home defense and all these kind of things, it'd probably be this one, because it really could fill all those roles. Yeah, it's not ideal for hunting deer, but you could hunt deer with it. And a lot of people do. The Mini 30 with the 7.62x39 is probably a little bit more ideal, but it's not quite as accurate, and it doesn't quite have the range of this gun. This has the better barrel, and it's just the more accurate version of the Mini 14 compared to the particular Mini 30 that I have. And 223-5.56 in general is a more accurate round in general compared to the 7.62x39. So if I could have only one rifle for whatever I needed it for, whether it be plinking, home defense, be a truck gun, or hunting, or whatever, I'd probably choose this rifle just out of all the guns that are in my particular collection. This is probably the one that I would go with. So anyway, that is my first Ruger Mini 14 that I ever bought, and it is definitely my favorite rifle out of my whole collection.
Hey, before I go, I just thought I'd remind everybody that I do have a second channel called Redneck Off the Range. Over there, I post most of my non-gun related content, so whether it's a video on my new tractor, my power tools, my projects that I'm working on, maybe wild game recipes, or just a random vlog, I post all of this kind of content over on my secondary channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out, Redneck Off the Range. But that's all for this video, so subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm Redneck Mini 14, and until next time, be safe.